everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is our first virtual event that's part of $2 Radio, which is a new project that we just started, but something that Eric has been working on for a while. So $2 Radio is like an audio-visual supplement to our books. And basically it's a way for us to build community and expand what we're already doing. So this is our first event. Thank you all for joining. And as you probably know, we have two folks on the call today. Sorry, I'm moving things around on the computer. All right, so tonight's event is between J.D. Wilkes and Gary Lovely. So for those of you that don't know, J.D. Wilkes is an American visual artist, musician, author, filmmaker, and Kentucky Colonel. He's also an avid purveyor of traditional American music and an accomplished musician. But he's perhaps best known as the charismatic frontman of the legendary Shack Shakers, which if you haven't listened to them already, you should. It's a band that's been described as a dynamite group by author/fan Stephen King, and his music has been featured on the Grammy-nominated soundtrack for HBO's True Blood. So Wilkes is the author of Barn Dances and Jamborees Across Kentucky, which is an exploration of the state's folk music heritage, and he is also the author of The Vine That Ate the South, which we published in 2017. So, hey, that's him. And Gary Lovely is our moderator tonight. He's the publisher of Harpoon Books and the editor-in-chief of the Harpoon Review. He's worked as an editor for Right Bloody Publishing for the past 8 years, reviewing work for authors such as Derek C. Brown, Taylor Malley, Brandon Melendez, and others. And he's currently the marketing manager for the book Loft of German Village. And he sits on the review board for Trillium Publishing, which is an imprint of the Ohio State University Press. So as I said, Gary works at the Book Loft, and they're our featured indie bookstore tonight. So with these events, we're going to have a featured indie for each one because we want to encourage folks to shop directly with indie bookstores, especially at a time like this where a lot of them have to have their doors closed. So I'm going to go ahead and right now put a link to the Book Loft in there. So if you don't already have JD's book, you should order it from the Book Loft. I know they've been sending it to a lot of people. Yeah, and we'll kind of revisit that at the end if anybody wants more information on the Book Loft too. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Gary and JD. And for those of you that maybe weren't here at the very beginning, if you have questions while this event is going on, please just put them in the chat. And I just want to ask that people keep their mics muted just to limit background noise. So, cool. All right, Gary and JD, it's all you.
Okay.
All right. So first off, JD, thanks obviously for joining me today. This is super cool. I love this book so much. If anybody knows anything about me, I love Kentucky like more than anything in the whole world. I'm super loud about it. And I think this book did a really great job of exploring the good weird about Kentucky and not just, a lot of the negativity I think that the South gets. So I guess my first question, the looming thing I think around all of us right now is what have you been doing to kind of manage what's happening right now as far as like the coronavirus and the pandemic?
Yeah, well, I've been, of course, staying home. My tours have been canceled kind of indefinitely. Just don't know how long it's going to go. And all of the tours are scheduled 6 months in advance. So it's hard to make up for the loss of all that. Some of currently the tour that remains on the books is in August, pending any kind of prolonged pandemic isolation that we're having to do. It's still going to happen. But the guarantees have been knocked down to door deals, so that's a tricky thing. You don't know if people are even going to come out. Are they going to be skittish?
Yeah.
So I've been sequestered here writing. I've taken advantage of it. I do online harmonica and banjo lessons. I sell merch. I sell these books. I have an Etsy shop. I have Patreon. Things I've been doing all along for years anyway. Doing painting commissions, sideshow banners. I've been painting maps for people of like their county with little pictures, vignettes and things in there. I've got a couple of those lined up. Uh, Again, these are things I've always done for decades. Really, is sidelines to be completely employed artist. You know, just a creative person. You know, without having to get a day job. It ends up being more time consuming than a day job would
Oh,
be.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's all on me to keep creating content, you know, like squeezing out every little thing I got
Yeah.
and pasting it all out right online so I don't wear people out on me. So it's a tricky thing, but I've got like I said, years worth of experience in spinning plates. So this all the plate now the band thing can't happen. So I'm just down to my other plates, and so far so good. I live on the cheap. I don't have any debts. You know, I live out in the middle of nowhere and in the swamps of Western Kentucky and lay low. And I'm just laying low and really enjoying the springtime, the nature, and the beautiful weather and the slow pace that I miss when I'm away from home.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So for anyone that don't know, who hasn't read the book yet, The Vine That Ate the South is Southern Gothic novel. Follow these two gentlemen that are following the old line to the famous kudzu house, which is, you know, an elderly couple has passed away and it's pulled their bodies out into the middle of the forest. And if JD, if you're okay with it, I'm going to have you just read a little bit from the book, maybe give some folks a taste of, you know, what they're going to be reading.
Sure. Well, all right. Well, we're talking about sort of a enchanted forest. It's sort of like Burnham, or maybe I forget the name of the forest in the Lord of the Rings. There's a magical quality to it, but it's sort of southern folklore magic and granny magic, Appalachian tales, and things like. Instead of Old English or Norse mythology, I try to work in our own inherent, you know, regional um, superstitions and tales and folk tales and mythology to but then I engage in this sort of this explanation in the book of how does this happen, sort of a reductionism of the magic of like, how is this possible? And so there's a sort of this pseudoscience explanation of why the trees are magic, what gives them this power. And so illustration I did of tree rings and what they contain. It's like if you remember in high school reading about tree rings and how they're sort of a map or a timeline of what they've been through. And I don't remember if I invented this term or if it is a real term, dendrochronology, which is sort of trying to explain the timeline of trees when you look at their rings, when you cut them in half. All right. So the folk tale is if you go into the deadening, which is the name of these woods, you're most assuredly to get lost and be forced to spend the night because you can't find your way out. But once the dawning sun rises, finally you will find your way out. But once you do, you find that not just a day has passed, but an entire year of your life is gone. That's the legend. And so this is picking up dendrochronology, touching on why that's and how that's possible. Lose a year in the forest, you ask? Impossible. How could you lose an entire year in one day? What could give a forest power like that? Well, as one of the timers at the drugstore says, when a man is concocting a scheme, he's got his gears a-turning. But he says the same holds true for the oaks, pines, and sycamores of the deadening. Their gears are turning too. Here's what I think he meant by that. As you may recall from high school science, tree rings are a sort of sketch of a timeline, one that depicts every year's worth of weather, fires, blights, inchworms, and other natural causes leave discolorations. 2. Concentric as the ripples in a pond, they are readily viewable to anyone handy with a crosscut saw. But here in the deadening, perhaps there are markings left by supernatural forces as well. Things like the winds of time, ghosts, and the nightly pelting of stardust. With each passing year, tree rings are riddled with mystic information, like a horoscopic wheel chart, or even an Indian mandala. And once its instructions are received from on high and its pith infused with magic, the deadening sets its gears to turning, deciphering the details as the years go by, and rotating its tree rings like, well, decoder rings. There's no real way of knowing, but perhaps these wooden circles are more like the inner workings of a bank safe. Free spinning tumblers that move within one another in opposing directions around a common center. Their notches catch like sprockets until the correct combination is achieved, until the desired results are unlocked. Whichever way these discs spin inside their bellies, the same old magnetism occurs, and when the time is right, the victims of the deadening are summoned, and their destinies are meted out in no uncertain terms. Anyway, there you go.
Fantastic.
That's an important bit there.
I love that, and I love the illustration that goes along with it. That's great. One of the standout things for the book for me was the way that you wrote dialect and an accent into the book.
Yep.
What was your process like during this? I know that you'd written a nonfiction book before that, but to flop over into fiction and then write conversation, how did you go about that? How was that for you?
Well, I read a book called Cabin Road, which is by John Faulkner, which is William Faulkner's brother.
Yeah.
And he was he's kind of overshadowed by his brother, but he wrote Southern fiction too, but it was humorous. It was Southern humor. And when he wrote the dialogue, it was, phonetic, like the way they would speak, and written out like that. I just remember getting knocked out by that. It was if you read along, you could get in the mind frame, and you could hear their voice so clear if you could get caught in that flow. And I'm also a fan of Viz magazine, which is a British mad magazine that's written in the Geordie accent, which I can't do. But if I read it phonetically, I could hear the Geordie accent. So I've always been a fan of that phenomenon, that if you can read it and get into the flow, you can really hear it. And so I just, when in writing Carver, who's kind of the redneck of the book, in writing his voice, he's very, very much a guy I really know. And I've even told that he's flattered. And even the drawing in the book is a drawing of him. He is and a lot of his stories are in that book, just the tall tales he would spin. He really exists. And so I just put myself in his in his mind. He kind of has a Hank Hill kind of voice. And like King of the Hill, like that, the way that they must write that dialogue, you just have to put yourself in the mind of the person, like doing an accent or doing an impression of someone. You have to kind of channel it. So I just wanted to do that, and so that y'all could hear it too.
Awesome. So I've heard, in other interviews, you spoke about the sublime, or or the and their overwhelming, feeling of of nature, while you're out. Could you speak a little bit about that and how you incorporated that into the book?
That was inspired by two things. It was my college art history course. She talked a lot about the sublime and the paintings of the Dutch masters, painting the huge ominous hulking gray skies over the North Sea, the ratio of sky to earth, even in it was Rothko, that's what he's doing. It's just this, anything that makes man feel small and insignificant. And so that was one. And then I read Moby Dick, and at first I couldn't get through it. And then once I did finally get through it, my mind was blown. It is really just one of the best books ever written. If you can get through it, it is worth it. It's like you sailed around the world with this book for 3 years.
Yeah.
And there is such a sense of the sublime, and that the metaphors he uses to make you feel that awe and that smallness. And I think in today's nature, climate, and culture, when everyone feels the center of the attention with their selfies and social media, I think it's kind of maybe a neat thing to do is to just remind ourselves of to humble ourselves a little bit and take nature. Don't take it for granted and really marvel. It's really nice to, like I said, I've just been enjoying springtime, and just my mind is blown every time you go out and look at the stars. So like it's just a good thing to touch base on, and I like writing about that, and the metaphors I can kind of cook up to help the reader understand what I'm talking about.
Right. And so I'm for a long time I lived in Lee County, Kentucky, where kudzu is everywhere. And if you guys don't know what kudzu is, it's this plant that was brought over as sort of a miracle plant to be, used for cattle to graze and things like that. But it kind of took over and it kills all of the plants. And I believe it's illegal to even to transfer or do anything with. But when you see this, it takes over the trees and it just envelops everything. And it's overwhelming. To look at it, it's truly overwhelming. I remember in Beattyville, Kentucky, when I was 13 or 14 years old, it made the front page of the paper because it had climbed straight from the ground through the middle of the air and wrapped around an electric line. And it was the craziest thing I'd ever seen. But the first time, when I picked up this book and realized that was what it was about, I was like, totally thrown back. I thought that was great. Kentucky, is known for all kinds of stuff, and you're going to talk about a lot of this in the book. As far as I actually hadn't heard of the meat rain that had happened. I thought that was kind of wild. So once, if you don't care, we talk about some of the folklore that is behind Kentucky and some of the cryptozoology kind of things that you mentioned in the book.
Yeah, I go into cryptozoology a lot more in the new book, but the ones that factor into thine, I wasn't so specific to Kentucky, but it was more Appalachian, I guess. And trying to get everything to kind of be walking around in their cryptozoological networks that you can't see, but they kind of manifest. So I touch upon the Bell Witch, who's really from Adams, Tennessee. I touch upon the white thing, which, depending on where you're from in the South, it could be anything from a banshee to a wampus cat. But they also all seem to have in common that the thing sings. It sings in a woman's voice, and it is a harbinger of death. So I like to imagine the white thing as a singing cat, because I wanted to have a Cheshire cat sort of character to make a reference to Lewis Carroll. I have the Mothman, who I reimagined as like a new age ascended master, akin to Mahatma and Jesus and whoever else the other ascended masters are in the Eastern or American version of the Eastern religion. There's a lot of the tongue-in-cheek stuff going on in here too. So some of the ways that I've imagined these things are serving a purpose that amuses me for some reason. And then I've got the Hoptown or the Hopkinsville Goblins, which I just saw that there was a podcast about, which were supposed to be UFO aliens, but I had reimagined them as almost looking like a bunch of hamburgers. Like, remember as a kid being really bothered by the way that he had the Hamburglar look. He just was so demonic looking before his makeover. And in the new book, I talk about something called the beast of Land Between the Lakes. The Land Between the Lakes is where, if you remember in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou at the end, where they flooded the river to create the power, TVA power. and everything goes underwater. That's what they did over here. They flooded the Tennessee and the Cumberland rivers to create two, I think, the largest man-made lakes this side of the Mississippi. I could be wrong there, but there's a sliver of land between those rivers or those lakes now, called the land between the lakes. And there has recently popped up this legend of like sort of a were ape or some sort of Bigfoot wolf man that I never heard growing up. I never heard that growing up. Other people say they have, but like as a kid, I would have heard that. I would have latched onto that. Maybe not. But so I go into detail in the new book about how maybe just the imagination of people can cook up an entity, and maybe now it is real. So that's another one. There's some in this book. I called it the Southern Bestiary.
Yeah.
I tried to go down the list of uniquely Southern monsters and try to represent.
Yeah, we just for myself, I know there's mention of big cat, in Kentucky and Appalachia in here, just it's supposed to be just kind of hidden in the woods, and that's definitely, I know from a real thing. Just for myself, I've heard my entire life, that there was supposed to be Black Panthers in Kentucky, in the hills of Kentucky, and there's all these stories of people that have heard them in the middle of the night and stuff.
Yeah.
It's been kind of freaky.
I have seen a panther here in Western Kentucky, a blonde mountain lion, run across. I was actually going out to a barn jamboree, and was driving out of the country to Benton, and it's almost like time slowed down when I saw this thing across the road. Like, that's not a dog. It was like a golden retriever, but it was slinky, and I'm like, I just couldn't believe my eyes. And it was running like a giant cat, and I just had. It's like, well, it's true. Now I had heard the roar, because it is very rustic, swampy, Clark's River bottoms. It's more like Cajun country here than hillbilly. And so we've got wild hogs now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I heard a roar one night. It was like a cat in heat, but it was so loud, you could hear the echo, like a half mile off of it, bouncing back, and all the dogs, like in a half-mile radius, started barking. I'm like, I sat up in bed like, that's no catty cat there. That was and then my neighbors say they have all had their own accounts of seeing. Well, the old man at the end of the road calls it a wampus cat. So that was their term for a panther.
Yeah, wampus cat. I've heard that my whole life. I love that.
Did you ever hear them calling it a panther?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I've had this. My grandmother had told this story her entire life. When she was a little girl, they had lived on the same property her whole life, and her brothers were out in the woods. I think they were hunting or just hiking or something, and almost fell in a giant hole. And when they looked, there were supposed to be panthers, like just 4 or 5 little baby panthers down in this hole.
Yeah.
And they of course, got out of there, as quick as they could. But I don't know how that happened. But
well, my brother-in-law has he's a big hunter, and he's got those like deer cameras or those trail cameras set up in where he goes, and he caught a picture of a big black panther. It was you could tell it was real. It was like it wasn't. You could tell about the scale of what it was standing next to. That it was huge. So
yeah,
they're here. It's just now that we're encroaching upon them, we can finally see them, I guess.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know.
So you mentioned, Carver in the book, is written, around someone that you knew. So the narrator, nameless, or has a name that is was that you? Is it supposed to be you?
It's a nightmare version of me. Everyone is sort of a nightmare version of themselves. That's what it's not me. We don't share the complete biography. Of course, it's a tall tale.
Sure.
You're supposed to write what you know, and that was the way that I could do that. Is just kind of show myself as a tenderfoot, which is really what I am. I don't really go hacking through the weeds looking for for stuff. I'm too lazy for that, or I feel guilty that I'm not don't get enough exercise. I really love just writing and drawing and sitting down and doing my little hobbies. I'm not that outdoorsy, although I love the app to sit there and look at it and go try to cut it up or shoot at it. So I have, I'm writing from that point of view of like kind of more of who I am. The biographical stuff in there is like, bizarro, asymmetrical nightmare version of my life, but, it's the first, I guess, I always get first person and third person. What is it whenever it's third person what, I don't know the rules.
I'm not going to try.
What is it? It's first person God, the God's eye view, like the generic narrator.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I don't even know.
Okay. I'm outing myself. I don't know.
Someone can sign off in the comments there.
Okay.
maybe they'll know. Yeah.
It's basically me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you I know you're from Paducah or the area around Paducah, right?
Right.
How is the reception, from your city? Did they love this, this narrative that kind of like takes place around their, around the things that they know or things that they see every day?
It's not like it's so mainstream a book, but people around here that like me and some of their relatives, I've got nothing but great feedback from. I haven't really read anything negative at all.
Oh, good.
I really haven't. Like, I think it's just charming enough for people to go, oh, I remember that story my grandma used to tell me. I think that was more the reaction, is like, oh, they like the it's almost like almost like local interest book, but novelized. So I think some of the people who thought maybe the novelization of it was a little out there and maybe even kind of profane at times, were able to appreciate the anthology of folk tales that I was writing also at the same time. So I think that's like, depending on how old, like some like people my age and younger kind of thought, they like satirical parts, and then the older people like the mythology and the folk tales, and there's a, both liking the other was the case as well.
So as far as the illustrations in the book, are some of these illustrations, is this stuff that was made specifically for the book? Did you have some of this kind of ready to go already before this started, or?
The only thing that I cannibalized or was this one here with Chief Paduke. Now, I had drawn that for a comic that I did called Grim Hymns, which was a shape note hymn book of Shack Shaker songs illustrated with cartoons and comic kind of comic book stuff. But really, Grim Hymns was sort of the precursor to Vine, because there is a sort of a plot in that mirrors what would become Vine That Ate the South, of a Native American spirit that is trying to get even with the white man for stealing the land, and the curse put upon the land. And in that book, it was Chief Paduke himself was the spirit. And then in the Vine, I changed it to Copperhead, a completely made up person. So
yeah. Cool. And you went to college for art, right?
I did.
Murray State. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So I know I've seen you on a lot of the covers, for the legendary Shack Shakers. Are you the first? Did you draw for the covers? Is that all you?
Several of them were. The ones that came out on Yep Rock were all my paintings, or there was mixed media stuff. I used to do that more often, and then I decided I wanted to like let other artists try their hand, and so we could kind of branch out, and so we didn't get too branded as same old. But I'd like to get back into that. I've drawn the artwork for the next Shack Shakers record, which I don't know when's coming out now because nobody knows anything. But I'm kind of getting back into that, doing the artwork for the albums and T-shirt designs, anything I can do to maybe actually start bringing it back to that brand identity of my artwork.
So to get back to the book a little bit, so you're working on the sequel right now. Do you have any like thing you want to share maybe about like what it's going to be about or kind of what it follows?
Yeah, really, I didn't have anything in mind for a sequel. I wasn't even going to do that, but I started writing down. This is going to sound weird, but you know me. I started keeping sort of a nightmare journal. And so, because these things were knocking me out, these dreams were so vivid. I'm like, these are like little movies. I have to write these down. And I just started writing them down as an anthology. Then I was just like, well, like what I did with the Barn Dance book and what I did with Vine, I took a list, like an anthology of things that appealed to me. And then I wrote a line through it to connect them.
Okay, cool.
So I'm like, well, I got enough of these weird dreams and these images. It's like, well, I guess I could connect them. It's been very, very hard to do that. I will say it is the hardest thing of any writing that I've ever done, is to try to make these crazy dreams that have nothing to do with one another just fall in line and force it into a novel. And then force it into a novel, I determined, with characters you already know. Trying to retrofit this dream journal into a sequel that has to going from the last book. Very hard thing to do. It's taken forever, but it's a labor of love because it's working. I can't believe it. But it's going to be even more whacked out than the last book, and there are ways that I can, of course, cheat the dreams to make it flow by leaving out certain details or adding detail, embellishing it as needed. So that's where I'm at. So I'm 30,000 words into it. I'm going to keep writing. It'll probably be a longer book than Vine. It'll be embellished with drawings and strange poems and other things that have occurred to me in a dream state. It really is Southern surrealism, because that's the definition of surrealism, is art out of dreams.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
I listened to your video for Kentucky Writers Day, where you're reading Passions from there, and there's a couple of things that you mentioned in there that I was like blown away to hear, because it's something that I'd only heard back in Eastern Kentucky. One of those things was eefing. It's kind of like, there you go, hee-haw. So yeah, hillbilly beatboxing. So is there have you guys ever tried to incorporate any of that into the legendary Shack Shakers albums, or?
I do it. I've done it on stage, but yeah, no, maybe we should go back on the record and add it in now that you bring it up.
Yeah.
No, we've done all kinds of crazy stuff in the backgrounds of the sound effects and mouth music and things like that. So there's got to be a time when we did that, or we did some sort of mouth music thing. I know there's a lot of jaw harp on our albums too. It's close. That's probably as close as it gets, though.
Yeah. So that's neat. Yeah, this whole book, man. I tell you what, this reminded me, like, it's so much of, like, I feel like the places that I've like grown up, play a little bit of banjo too. And back in like late 2000s, we used to play in Booneville, Kentucky, every Thursday night. And I remember there was a guy, that played the harmonica there, had like a stack of harmonicas that he played. And, a couple old men would, they would clog dance and stuff around. And I remember in the middle of one of these shows, a rattlesnake like just went straight across the middle of the floor of this, this like basically a cardboard box with a microphone in the middle of it. Everybody's like screaming, and an old lady comes out of the middle of this and just like cuts the head off of this thing with a shovel. Like while we're in the middle, like mid song here. And
That's awesome.
That's what this book reminded me of, was like that situation blown up. Like, and yeah. I absolutely loved it.
Well, that's the flavor of the types of places that I've been to, especially when I was writing that barn dance book. Some of the far-flung nooks and crannies of the places you wind up at.
Yeah.
Just so truth is stranger than fiction, and then so I just I try to log those away up here or write them down so I don't forget them.
Man. So do you have any interest in reading a little bit from the new book? Maybe that I spoke about.
Yeah, let me grab that real quick, and that I don't disappear. I think we test this out. It worked before. Let me know if you can still see me.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I renamed this first chapter Halloween. So here it goes, and you stop me because it can go a little long. How long do you think should go? As I know it's a 10-minute read. Should I?
Let's try to do half of that. Will be good.
Okay. Chuck Bumpus, better known in the stump removal business as Chainsaw Charlie, took a pull from a Limp brand beer can, one he'd been warming up over the fire pit, and went ahead and said what everybody else was thinking. Skeeter's done got it worse since them Martins up and through the coop. Dang old punky houses might as well done came it on down. You done took the words right out of my mouth, Charlie, Brother Wibb upspoke. Here, hold my beer, said Charlie, taking the lead. So the pole holding up the Martin gourds was rightly felled. They are little bird houses, actually, albeit ones long ruined by widowmaker limbs. It seems the branches had cracked during an old ice storm and were left to hang at their elbows. This allowed tree snakes to slither down into the bird holes, whereupon they'd eaten up all the eggs. I should say wherein. I'm editing as I go. True enough, because Charlie went to pulling out some snake skins from them and immediately commenced fashioning them into hat bands. Once rid of the dead snakes, the gourds got carved into jack-o'-lanterns. But the biggest one was set aside to become a banjo, a gift for Cleft Palate Leo. He was over on the porch where his old-timey string band faced out to a yard of moonlit revelers. It was All Hallows Eve. First, a note regarding Leo's band, or his band. Notice how rib bones and whisk brooms are accepted as legitimate musical instruments. They can be used to keep the rhythm, after all. However, they are only to be used by those least among us, those who are the most musically hopeless, or, well, let's be honest, the most tetched, the most inbred, that is. Bless their hearts. On this day, the ultimate consolation prize is a loosely rolled up newspaper copy of the Possum Trot Thrifty Nickel. This makeshift bone, as it were, was to be awarded to 80-year-old Eve Balfour, whose only talent is what they call eefing, a hillbilly form of mouth music akin to beatboxing, hence his name. Can't pitch a whoop-de-doo without no Eve, they all hollered. That's why he always gets the honor to start the tune. All heads turned toward the old slew-footed dwarf as they awaited the official setting of the tempo. Then up he started, his impeccable eefing, that lost art form now heard only in hee-haw reruns, and usually never not accompanied by armpit noises. Good old Eve, they rejoiced. Bless his heart the most. The tempo was set, and the rhythm of their one same song endlessly lilted along the garth. Bum-diddy, 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 bum-diddy. It was an ancient witch-burning tune called The Death of Goody Nurse, a doozy dating back to the trials of Salem. But it was a lively number, one that galloped like a runaway chuck wagon in a dog food commercial, though this one perhaps chased by a Halloween hellhound. Cleft Palate Leo and his stump jumpers, those slack-jawed makers of mirth, played on and on, providing the square dance soundtrack for an acre's worth of townfolk. Most of them lived drab, hopeless lives, but on that hallowed eve, they danced all night long, swigging moonshine, whooping it up, and making whoopee. Each beat ricocheted up and under their violent, clogging feet like the bullets of a bandit making a drunk man dance. Boot heels tapped with nailed-on bottle caps kicked up under their crinolines. All this while crumb-snatching kids gobbled mud clumps a-flying loose from all that dancing. Their wide eyes bulged from the holes cut into devil masks. Smiles even wider hid beneath their masks as well. Smiles just as manic as the maws drawn on. Gourds and turnips sneered back at them with flickering inset candles. Segmented cardboard skeletons with hinged joints that swung around grommets. Orange tissue ribbon and bunting, effigies of banshees, rubber vampire bats, and now snakeskins dangled on high from the arms of trees. Here, those trees are subconsciously understood to be holy. In their divine design, they do, after all, express the eldest proclivities of the universe, what with their competitive fractals vying for sunlight. I could ever articulate such a concept, I must say, meaning no offense, but their Irish blood memory sure could. It would say something like, draw we now nigh into raking shadow, like lambs what seek the shepherd's hook. See the trees with rickety wands, like crooked lightning steeples cast to the stars. Now go, up from the slumber of Sith, go ye roots and rhizomes, to ring a ring for fairies. O writhe and weave thy Irish knots in a druid signum crucis, veins like vines, blood like sap. Are we not akin? Course they not both through wise and winding channels? Let us now enwreathe the woodlands, hand in hand, to rejoice this All Halloween. Indeed, this place seems a grove groomed long ago by the magic of grannies, the burled skin of sycamores, curls like the twisty stripes of a wicked witch's knee socks. Look, see how the oldest tree hangs to the lowest. It is heavy bent with both age and those dangling holiday decorations, looking something like the devil's chandelier or a bumper chute blown inside out by the gusts of hell's inglory. Yep, it was a good old hillbilly masquerade like you've never seen before. I'm gonna stop right there because I'll go too far.
All right, I love it.
Cool.
Excited for that. I'll go ahead and start the Q&A off.
Okay.
I actually had a question from Connor, who is one of the booksellers at the Book Loft where I work. He loved the book just like me, and was curious if you had any recommendations for further reading as far as Fargo's is Southern, anything that's Southern Gothic or anything that kind of explores, the mythos of the South and things that maybe you mentioned in the book.
Well, I like the nonfiction of Kevin McQueen, and I would highly suggest the Kentucky Book of the Dead, and some other titles. He is a teacher at Eastern Kentucky University, I think, and I think that's where he's at. And just did a book reading with him up in Owensboro, and he's been a friend of mine for a long time, and he writes with humor too. So it's like horror almost with humor. It's a great blend, and it's kind of what inspired me to write in the way that I do. Not going all the way into horror, just keeping it kind of gothic, but coming up for air and popping in what I think is an overlooked style, which is Southern humor. and it has its own unique flavor. Like I said, John Faulkner,
Mhm.
the brother of William Faulkner, was a Southern humorist and is overshadowed by his brother. But Cabin Road would be a good book, and you definitely hear that Southern accent. You know, the regional flavor, the way he writes dialogue is nice. Trying to think of what the author William Gay is a kind of a hero of mine. He's passed away, but big hero of mine. And Providence of Night and Twilight, not the vampire teen books, but the Twilight title that he wrote is really good about grave robbers. And no, that'll get you going.
Nice. Looks like we've got a question from from Mandy.
Okay.
Have you ever seen any of the cryptids you write about in person? If so, which ones?
Well, Wampus Cat, as we said, the panther, the yellow panther I saw. It wasn't a black panther, but I definitely saw a cat bigger than a wildcat even, or a bobcat, if this was the size of a mountain lion in western Kentucky. I'd see, I might sound like a crackpot, but I have seen shadow people, and I don't know what that is. But it's been corroborated with other people that saw it, and cloaked like the Grim Reaper or something like that. I've heard footsteps in the attic where the roof is shaped like this, where there first of all, who's in my house, and how are they locked when the door? As you can see, the dormer style ceiling I have, no one could stand up that tall to plod that heavy. So there's something in this house. But it's peaceful, I guess. Ghosts and things like that. I know it makes me sound crazy, but maybe science just doesn't know yet. Like sea serpents. Then we put Latin terms to it. We discovered, oh, that's just a giant squid. Lay off, all right? What else? It's mostly ghostly things and unexplained, like plodding footsteps, corroborated cloaked figures out in the periphery of not just my eye, and big cats.
So it looks like Joseph says, thank you for doing this. I'm in. I'll be making some book orders. Can you share how you developed as a writer?
I think I should never have gone into music, actually, because I had so much fun writing. I ended up I went to Nashville to be a musician and got the band up and running, but the whole time I was in Nashville, it never occurred to me to even try to write a hit. I didn't even know I was supposed to be worried about writing a hit. I just wrote my little short stories in song form, and so like you'll see a lot of alliteration and sort of a flow, a rhythm to the way the sentence is read that sounds lyrical. And like that's just the way that developed, is because I started out as a songwriter first. I did take creative writing in college, but I don't think I was I don't know. I got a lot out of it, but I don't think I was thinking along those lines yet. It wasn't until I had like 6 or 7 albums of Southern Gothic songs written that I figured that I'd try my hand at the long form prose version, and that's what these books are. They're just long songs, really.
Yeah. Right. So Maria is asking, in addition to literary influences and local flavor or folk tales, do you ever get any inspiration from movies or TV?
Oh yeah. I don't just like this genre. I like science fiction. I like Star Wars and things and action movies. I like weird art films. I like all kinds of stuff. It's just, if you write what you know, this is kind of like what I grew up around. And so that's what I'm probably most comfortable with. So so in my own wheelhouse, I was really inspired by the True Detective first season. Sure. And Nick Pizzolatto, I can't pronounce his last name, but that guy's a genius, I think. And he's like 20 something years old. I just want to wring his neck. You know, he's so good. And his book Galveston, I read, and it's a great kind of Southwestern crime noir, but I think you'd get a kick out of. But yeah, I really like that first season of True Detective, and you know, and then other genres like, you know, science fiction and you know, quirky comedies and things like that. I love Anchorman.
Yeah.
You know, I love funny stuff. You know, I love it all. And I try to make, you know, I love stand-up comedians and late night TV and even like Ren and Stimpy cartoons and Beavis and Butthead. And I like sort of the sense of humor of my Generation X, kind of it was I think edgier than what it is now. And I tried to put that in it kind of an edgy version of Southern humor in my books, you know, it's where it can kind of crack up more than just your grandpa, you know.
So Darren Zimmery, famed Ohio poet, wants to know what's the favorite Kentucky poet?
Poems?
Yeah, poet.
Poets. Oh, let's see. Oh, I guess it would have to be. Oh man, I'm coming up with nothing here. Who's the guy? Hunter S. Thompson's Gonzo guy that's doing the thing now. Oh man, hold on, I gotta look it up. He is the poet laureate of Kentucky, the Beat poet laureate. What's his name?
I should know that. I don't.
Oh man, look it up. Well, like that's another question while I'm doing this.
Okay.
It's just I'm drawing a blank.
Mandy wants to know what's your favorite Southern food.
Oh, fried chicken.
Oh, yeah.
Fried chicken from the Piggly Wiggly here in Reedland. Actually, the best. I think they're now, but when we moved here, it was Piggly Wiggly and the deli. If you're ever in Paducah, and I've had rival restaurateurs that work here in Paducah go, yeah, if you want the real thing, go over to the food giant in Reedland, and I swear it's the best. You know, just soul food. Like and in Nashville, it used to be Edgefield Diner. That place was amazing. African American Meat and Three that unfortunately got what do you call it, gentrified out of there at East Nashville when they turned that place into Brooklyn. They lost a lot of culture, and then unfortunately Bolton's spicy chicken, hot chicken down in East Nashville just got demolished by the tornadoes. So those were my favorite places, at least in Nashville, to eat. And they're both gone, unfortunately. So, and now they've got like some haute cuisine hipster version of it. You know, of course, you know, that drives me nuts.
Looks like they said, is it Ron Whitehead? Is that who?
Ron Whitehead, thank you. Yes. And I just did an event with him, and I'm on his album. It drives me crazy that I can't come up with these things. And so sorry about that, Ron, if you're watching. He's amazing, and he's a stream of consciousness. Another guy I like that I don't know if he even writes books, but he is a performance artist here in Paducah. His name is Wheeler Underwood, and I've never seen anything like it of stream of conscious performance art, poetry with a rock and roll band behind him while he's swinging 2 nunchucks.
That's awesome.
I mean, I've traveled this world far and wide, and I still come back to Wheeler Underwood in Kentucky as one of my heroes. And I think he and Ron Whitehead would be like 2 peas in a pod. Just the minds that just are constantly creating. And in the moment, like how can people rhyme things that fast? It takes me forever. It really is a gift to be able to think that quickly and to make it rhyme and blow your mind with what they're actually saying. I'd say Ron Whitehead and Wheeler Underwood.
All right. So Molly, do you have anything?
I don't have any questions or anything. Did anybody else have any questions they wanted to put in the chat before we I don't know. If we don't have anything else. No.
Should I get my nunchucks?
Yeah. Now I really want to know. I'm going to look that up later, see if anybody put a video on the internet about it.
Actually, I did on my Instagram. If you go down, there's video of him doing this. I didn't get the poetry part, but I got the double nunchuck rock performance. He's amazing.
Oh, we do have one question from Heather asking if you have any ghost stories in your family.
Yeah, but they're kind of like not like campfire ghost stories. They're like, what the hell was that kind of thing? This one was in the book that was actually taken from real life. I don't know how much of it is accurate, how much I have believed my own embellishment after having written about it. So, but here's how it is in the book. My dad, I think, was into astral projection in the 60s and 70s, like in real life, I believe. Whenever he was sent down to Louisiana in the 80s, we were still up in Kentucky. And so, you know, the economy was bad. You had to take a job wherever he could. He found one down there, and he was away for a year. So it was a year of my life where he wasn't around. I was about 10 years old, I think, or something. And my mom says, you know, when it's just us at the house, he's down there, everybody's missing daddy. And my mom was thinking about him. It's time for bed. She's getting in bed and about to turn the lights off when she sees his face come through the wall like that. It's like this spectral swirl sort of thing happening. That might be the embellishment. And then the phone rings and my mom picks it up and my dad goes, "Did you get it?" Checking to see he had been trying to astral project himself home to visit. And she said, yeah. So wow. That was, yeah, that's, yeah. And that my mom is a very traditional, conservative Southern lady. And not the type of story that, you know, she would make up. She says, yeah, she's the one that told me that, you know. Since then, they've mellowed out. They're not hippies anymore. But that's what makes it more believable. They're so you know, sweet and kind and still telling like that story. It's like it's true. I believe them.
Wow.
I don't know.
Does anybody else have any questions? I have one just out of pure curiosity because I only heard this song today. There's a song with Billy Bob Thornton, or it's more of like a poem story kind of thing that you guys did. Really brutal, sad story about having to put down a dog kind of on the side of the street. Is this a true story?
I think it was. He wrote it. And I had asked him if he would contribute some spoken word to our records. It's something he could email us easily. We wouldn't have to get together. And he sent this to me, and I remember playing it for the first time. And I'm like, this is what he sent me. gruesome story. And so I found myself in the position of like editing Billy Bob Thornton and censoring him and taking out some of the gore. So what you're hearing is the cleaned up version.
Wow.
But I felt weird. Like I'm the director here. How am I qualified to edit Billy Bob Thornton? You know, like he's an Oscar-winning actor. And but I had to do it because I can't foist that upon. But what was left over, and he did like the end result. What was left over was a sort of a tough story that ultimately ends with a moral about mercy. And I think I think we accomplished that in
it's great.
Town, you know, and the soft music behind it was from Dwayne Dennison, who was a shack shaker. He was in the Jesus Lizard. And I said, well, I wanted it to sound like the Sling Blade soundtrack, which is like either like a Daniel Lanois or Brian Eno kind of soundscape, not anything hillbilly at all. I wanted it to be off, kind of slightly off-putting, but sweet, and just like the flavor of the story that we were left with. You know, it really sticks with you. It's like,
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to skip over it because it just takes so much emotion out of me to hear it again. You know, but that was pretty neat. I think it came out all right.
Yeah, I feel what you're saying there too, because I listened to it about 45 minutes or so before we started this, and I was like, okay, I need some like Old Crow Medicine Show or something a little faster to get me back.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's rough, but it's a sweet sort of message. Ultimately, I think it was a true story because he did work on the highway crew in Arkansas back in the day before he was famous. Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks for answering that.
Yeah.
So yeah, if anybody else, had any questions or anything, Molly, is there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna wrap this up, I just want to say thank you to JD and Gary for doing this. You two were the first two I reached out to when doing these virtual events, and it was a lot of fun. So I'm so glad that we got to kick this off with the two of you. Thank you to everybody for joining and tuning in. This is the first of many events, hopefully. We have 2 more on schedule. Both are on upcoming Fridays. Next week's event, we have Andre Perry, who wrote Some of Us Are Very Hungry Now, along with Phil Kim and Sadie Dupuis from Speedy Ortiz, talking about art in uncertain times. So if you're curious to hear how artists, both like art administrators and, musicians and, people that are having to cancel tours and stuff, like JD, we talked about that earlier, how you're dealing with that. We have that on a call next Friday. And then the following Friday, we have Sarah Rosetter, who's the author of the Book of X, and Yelena Moskovich, who is the author of Virtuoso in Conversation. So again, thank you all for coming, and we'll hopefully see you on some more of these events. And thank you again to JD and Gary for taking time out to do this. So,
yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
All right, cool.
Stay healthy.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Yeah, see ya.
See ya.
Yeah.